It might surprise some of you that I do read books without spice, okay? I know most of the book recommendation videos that I make are spicy or smutty book recommendations. I would say 40% of the books that I read don't include any spice at all. So I have some book recommendations for my people out there who don't want spice or intimate scenes in their romance books. Let's chat. I'm just breaking this video up into two sections. I'm going to do a fully romance section, and then I will go into some romance plus fantasy. I don't want to call it romantasy because that genre is now, I feel like, getting a bad rep. I love romantasy, but I think separating the two, it's a romance book with a fantasy subplot, and that's what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to put this down. I don't know why I'm still holding it. I'm going to drink it, but I'm just going to put it down. My first recommendation is going to be Things You Save in a Fire by Catherine Center. Now, before I get into that book, I do want to say Catherine Center is known for her closed door romances. She's wonderful at creating a romantic plot that really focuses on the female aspect of the book. So very women's lit character journey versus romance. So I did look this up, and apparently Catherine Center, I could be completely wrong, I saw this on Google, but in an interview, Catherine Center said that her husband is a middle school teacher, so she keeps her romance books pretty clean, which I respect. Cassie is our main character in Things You Save in a Fire. She is a female firefighter. This book has romance. The main male character, everyone calls him Rookie in the firehouse, but mainly this book focuses on how women are treated in a male-dominated industry, such as firefighting. Really touches on that topic, and the romance is such a side plot. And I love that because you got to see Cassie really grow into her role as a firefighter at this really old school station, and they're treating her as if she's not an equal, and you're really seeing her grow as a character. Any intimate scenes in this book are closed door or very subtle. They're very like touching hands or glances or flirting intention. There's zero on-page smut. The next two books that I want to recommend also involve an author. So I'm going to go over these two books, and these are highly recommended in the no spice area, but Sarah Adams, When in Rome, and The Cheat Sheet, I did read. Perfect something, I forgot what that pink one is called. Just like Catherine Center, Sarah Adams is an author who does romance books without spice very well. So most of her books will not include spice. When in Rome is a small town romance where Amelia is a pop star and happens to get a flat tire in front of a man's house. This man's name is Noah, and he helps her out. He also kind of helps bring her into this small town and get to know the community, and it is that goofy, cringy kind of small town community. You've got your classic nosy next door neighbor and the bakery down the street. Like, it's very small town, very cozy, and I love that. And then The Cheat Sheet is a sports romance. We have Nathan, who is a pro football player, and we have Bree, who is a dancer. They have been best friends for a really long time, but both of them, they don't realize their feelings for each other, which always ends up being really fun watching the main characters kind of realize that they do like each other, and they always have. Sarah Adams, she's a great no spice recommendation, and her books are really fun. Again, they include the typical tropes, so don't go into it thinking that you're going to get the most unique story ever. It's very Hallmarky, but they're cute, they're fun, and nice palette cleansers because they're really dang short. The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This is a magical realism romance book. Very similar to Catherine Center in that way, where Ashley Poston really focuses on the woman of the story. It's a women's lit plus a romance, and you're also getting that magical realism. So it's a very unique genre that Ashley Poston takes you into with all of her books. But this one specifically, the amount of quotes and highlighting and pretty words that are in here really stuck with me, and the overall plot really stuck with me as well. Our main character, Clementine, did recently lose someone very close to her in her family, and she ends up moving into the apartment of this lost family member. Our main love interest, his name is Iwan, I think I'm saying that correctly. He ends up in this apartment somehow, and I want you to read the book to find out how and why, because it's a great book. But Iwan and Clementine end up forming a really deep connection, and it's not full of lust or angst. It is just really good soulmate feel connection that these two have, and their banter and the cutesy moments with all the flirting, like, they are so meant for each other, and I really saw it through this book. But again, you're really just watching Clementine figure out her way in the world after dealing with a major loss. And I loved that. I resonated with this book so much. If you've ever lost a loved one, I absolutely recommend it. It brings some light to that situation and kind of seeing the good in everything. It's a really great, heartwarming story. Oops. Now the next one is a little controversial because I didn't love this book, but I can appreciate what it did. I think One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It's been a few years and I remember everything because it's a really tough decision that you as a reader have to make. Emma and Jesse are high school sweethearts. They've been together forever. They love each other. They're super sweet, adventurous. And on one of his adventures, Jesse goes missing. He's missing for many years, and Emma decides it's time for her to move on. So she does, and she falls in love with Sam. Sam and Emma are engaged now. Things are going good. She's moving on. She still obviously misses her husband because he's assumed dead. Jesse is found alive. He's found, and Emma has to make the decision between the two men that she loves. Does she go back to her husband that she hasn't seen in many years because she thought he was dead? Or does she stay with her fiance because they've been together for many years and they love each other? For me, this book was brutal because I could not imagine losing my husband, thinking that I lost my husband, and then fully moving on to fall in love with someone else and just be like, have that closure, to then have that ripped away. To lose and then to gain and then to lose again is just, that's an emotional roller coaster that Emma goes through, and you really do see that through this book. I did not like it, more so because of the way it made me feel. And again, it's a great book. I really like Taylor Jenkins Reid, but it makes you feel pretty crappy because you've got to watch Emma figure out how to handle this situation. And going along with the point of this video, there is no spice. It is a romance book. There are some cute scenes because you are watching Emma and Jesse, then you're watching Emma and Sam a few years later. There are cutesy moments, but overall it's an emotional read. You might tear up. You might also contemplate what you would do in this situation, because I know I did. Absolutely recommend it if you are looking for something without spice and maybe a little bit of an emotional pull there. The next one I adore. Ali Hazelwood, anything she writes I will read, and I do love Check and Mate. Now, this one is categorized as young adult. I think that's bull doo-doo. I do not think it is young adult. I think it should be new adult. This is more spicy than the other books that I recommended. And spicy as in there are like one chili pepper, like there might be more intense kissing scenes or more intense other scenes, but there's no explicit content in this, and I just don't know if I would recommend it for anyone 18 and under. What's a new adult? I don't know what a new adult is, but I think this is more new adult, not young adult. Mallory is a high school dropout and a prodigy chess player, but she dropped out of high school to take care of her family, and one day she runs into Nolan, who is a professional chess player, and she plays him and she wins. Nolan is like shocked. He's like, who are you? He becomes a little obsessed, and it's an adorable attraction that you see these two go through. But she thinks because she kind of dropped out of high school, she's taking care of her family, she has this need to provide for her family, even when she's young. Like, she's a young girl, she should be growing, she should be playing chess, and her family kind of notices that, and that's exactly what Nolan and Mallory do. They grow together while loving the game of chess, and it is so stinking cute. Ali Hazelwood has some really great humor. Like, I enjoy her humor. Oh, that was another thing. I remember there being a lot of cuss words in this book, and I was like, as a young adult, I don't know if that's appropriate. It's a romance, and it's cute, and it does not have intimate sexual scenes in it. So if you're looking for maybe a little bit more than no spice, this is it. It's like, again, that half or one chili pepper. Now I want to move on to some romantasy, fantasy plus romance, romance plus fantasy, however you want to phrase it. My first recommendation is actually going to be The Black Witch by Laurie Forrest. I read this trilogy years ago, and I don't remember everything, but it was a young adult fantasy series, and I don't see it talked about a lot on here, and I haven't even talked about it a lot. I don't own the books, so it's not like I see them all the time or recommend them all the time. Thinking back on this series, it reminds me of Zodiac Academy, just without the like inappropriate teacher and student things and all of that jazz. One thing that I really love about this series and what I remember from it is it really focuses on themes of prejudice and personal growth within our main character Ellerin. And Ellerin is a descendant of someone very important. I don't remember. But Ellerin is a witch and she ends up going to this school with many other beings or species, and she is noticing that in this world there is a lot of prejudice between all of these species. She comes to realizations of things and why people don't like witches or why they do. Different magical elements. It is kind of dark academia. Ellerin is discovering a lot of family secrets when she's at this school. She's also making friends and she's making enemies and she's going through it all. But there is a love interest and there is zero spice. More of that angsty teen tension going on than it is like flirting. Like there's not really flirting, it's just like, I'm gonna ignore you because I like you kind of thing. But it is a great series and I don't see it recommended enough. So I would absolutely pick it up if you're looking for zero spice in a fantasy romance book. The next one, you guys aren't gonna be surprised that I'm recommending because I think I've done it almost in every recommendation video. It's Discovery of Witches. If you have not read this book yet, I'm disappointed. It's by Deborah Harkness. There is a TV show and I am rereading this next month and I'm thrilled. I'm so excited to reread this series. It's about Matthew and Diana. This book does not have spice. It is a little bit of historical fiction. It's got a little bit of fantasy. It's got a little bit of romance. Like, you're kind of getting it all in this series. And again, I could not time travel. That's a big one. Like, there's a lot going on here. Most of the intimate scenes in this book are very little detail and closed door. There's really not a lot of it at all. Matthew and Diana, they are adults. I don't know why that matters. Why did I say that? So it's an adult book, but there's not a lot of spice. I don't know what I was trying to get at that. Diana is a witch and she's also a historian. She's pretty distant from her heritage of being a witch. Like, she doesn't really associate with that side of her life, but she stumbles upon this magic book. Being a historian, she gets really intrigued, but unfortunately for her, magical beings are kind of drawn to this book, which means they're drawn to her. And Matthew, being one of these magical things, a vampire, he is very drawn to Diana, not just because she has the book, but because she's beautiful and because he is infatuated with her. And they create a relationship, kind of trying to figure out what this book is and what it does and what it means for the world, but also trying to discover more of Diana's hidden powers, because again, she's kind of suppressed her powers. She's not very in tune with that side of herself, and Matthew is there to help. It's so good. It's so good. I'm actually just going to keep this one out because I'm reading it so soon. The next one is going to be a no-brainer, and you guys are probably tired of seeing it everywhere, or you've read it already and you're like, I'm going to skip through this part. Totally fine. But if you haven't read Powerless by Lauren Roberts, I absolutely recommend it. This is a YA fantasy series with some romance in it. There's some trials in there, very Hunger Games-ish, but there's no spice, and there doesn't have to be for it to be a good book. And she proves that with this series. So if you're looking, like, I'm not going to talk much longer on this because of how popular it is, but if you have not read it, I do think you would like it. Like, it's just a very easy, fast-paced young adult fantasy that I think a lot of people getting into this genre, or if you're already in this genre, you should read it. The next one, I'm also reading the third book in this series very soon, and it's the Prison Healer series. I've read this recently, and I'm reading the third book ASAP, very soon, because I need to know what happens at the end of this series and in this world. But Kiva has been in prison for 10 years. And this is a young adult fantasy, so tension, and it's cutesy, and there's a lot of flirting. Jaren happens to stumble into this prison somehow with the rebel queen, and Kiva kind of gets sucked into this rebel society in a way, and I don't want to say anything more because that would be spoiling it. These characters, Kiva, Jaren, Nari, Kip, they're all going through very adult things, and I've said that in a review before, but they're going through really hard things as teenagers. Like, they are struggling, and rightfully so. They're literally in a prison. I'm more in this one kind of like Powerless. the banter and the flirting, and it's also cute. It's just like you're watching these two kind of tiptoe around each other, not admitting their feelings for each other, but you can tell that they like each other, but they can't because they're in prison. It's great. The last recommendation that I have for you guys is gonna be one that I also read recently. I've been in my YA era apparently, and it's Once Upon a Broken Heart. This is also a very popular series. We're watching Evangeline make a deal, not with the devil, we're watching Evangeline make a deal with Jax, who is a fate in this world. And fates are kind of sneaky, they're kind of like genie-ish, but he is like, yes, I will help you get your love back because your love fell in love with someone else. I will help you get him back if you do these 3 things for me. And those 3 things are kisses, but I won't get into that. Very sweet, very whimsically, and almost Alice in Wonderland, Cheshire Cat, like Tim Burton kind of feel. Like when you're reading this, I was confused. I'm mostly excited to pick up the second book because that's where I hear things get crazy between Jax and Evangeline. I hear there's a lot more romance and it keeps it clean. I'm excited to continue this one. Everyone talks so highly about the second book, so you guys have not shied away from your recommendation on that one. But I do have, behind the camera, 5 books that I'm going to quickly just flash up on the screen that have no smut, no spice, that I really truly enjoyed. And again, I'm not going to go into summaries or anything, but these are some great books. I've just seen them recommended in these kinds of videos pretty often, so I'm going to keep it short and minimal. Daisy Jones and the Six, also a Taylor Jenkins Reid book. This book is so cool, so unique. There is kind of a romance in this. It's a little toxic because they're all in a band, but it's an interview style. It's a very unique way of going about a romance book. One Dark Window, young adult fantasy, and it is so fun. Elm in the second book. Elm is mostly a main character in the second book, but Elm stole my heart in this series. It's 2 books, One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns. Love in Other Words. This has gone around on Book Talk and BookTube for years, but if you have not read this and you like romance, what are you doing? It's a modern romantic classic book. Like, you have to read this. Binding 13. This one is very traumatic, okay? It might not be spicy, but it's gonna break your heart. There's also a lot of trigger warnings. Look them up. And the rest of this series does get spicier. So the first 2 books have zero minimal spice. There's just a lot of like tension and cutesy kind of romance. But the other books in the series do get spicier because the characters are older. And then Today, Tonight, Tomorrow, this is set in one day. Like, this whole book is set in just one day of a senior year scavenger hunt kind of thing that their high school is doing. And they both have hated each other for all 4 years of high school, but really they loved each other. It's really stinking cute, and again, it's a pretty short book and the whole book is set in one day, so it's a pretty fast read. It's hard to put down. So that is it for this video. See, I read books without spice. I do. I just went over some that I read that have no spice. Okay? I hope you enjoy some of these books, and I will see you in the next video. If you've read these or you haven't read some of these, comment down below and let me know your thoughts and feelings. Goodbye.